The Walking Dead with the last part of Season 10. So, as Lydia explains all the things that just happened, even though everyone's safe now besides Eugene's team, because these 6 episodes aren't going to be worried more about the story, they're going to be worried more about extra story. So, of course, speaking of extra story, we end up getting Maggie back. But apparently she's here for some random reason, but isn't too happy to see Negan walking around with everybody. Yeah, this is going to be a tough road ahead. But we are introduced to 2 of Maggie's right-hand man, and the rest of her people are actually put up in a shelter. But they did have a community, but it ended up falling. So Maggie explains to Daryl and Carol she's going to take Hilltop back. But Daryl ends up showing that the Whisperers did a big toll to Hilltop. And Carol even explains to Maggie that she's the one that let Negan out to do this, because he's the only reason that they ended up killing Alpha. And the crazy part about this is Carol, Daryl, and Maggie are the only ones from the original group of The Walking Dead. Of course, Rick isn't dead, but he's not in the show anymore. So even though Maggie and Carol are going to have their differences, we all still got to work together. So Maggie ends up finding a bunch of cargo places, and that's where they're going to sleep for the night. Because Daryl and them aren't in lead, she's kind of the leader. But as it's getting nighttime and everybody's about to lay down, Daryl ends up coming in and him and Maggie talk. And she ends up saying that her and Georgie went to many colonies, as she was in a colony a long time in Knoxville. But all of them got overrun, and Maggie said that she's not sure if Georgie in. But more importantly, somebody ended up taking out Maggie's group. So now it's just her 2 right men, and some of the others, and her son. But the worst guilt Maggie's got to live with is that her son always asks how his dad died, and Maggie just says that it was a bad person. So we can really see that Negan really broke her. Next day, it looks like Kelly goes looking for clues from her sister, but Maggie ends up catching her, saying that they can't leave their perimeter. But Daryl explains that she's lost her sister and they're still looking for her. The dude with the mask ends up helping her look for anything and any signs of her sister, because Maggie says that he's lost his sister too. So Daryl and the others end up making it back to Maggie's people. But before they can even get to the door, it looks like a lot of smoke's coming from it. And when Maggie and all of them get inside, they see nobody. And that's where Maggie explains that they've been hunted by people called the Reapers, and they are highly trained in fighting and guns. So yay, more problems, but lucky for them, Daryl is a hunter, so he knows exactly where everybody else ran off to. So let's see how many people of Maggie's we can come back with, and hopefully her son. And as one person's walking outside, Daryl catches her, but it ends up being one of Maggie's people. That's a little awkward. But all of them end up hearing a woman scream as she got shot, but Daryl definitely knows that it's a trap. But Maggie's other friend did not know it was a trap, so she ends up getting sniped. Then while he's sniping at Maggie and Daryl, they figure out that it's a bolt-action rifle that has 3 bullets in it, so it takes time to reload, so she's gonna flank from the right. She ends up making it to the sniper, but no one's there. Yeah, because this dude's pulling up Predator mode and hiding in the bushes watching them. He does eventually come out and fight Maggie, but she ends up getting trapped. And Daryl shoots an arrow into the Reaper, which he does nothing about, and then throws Daryl like a ragdoll. Eventually, Daryl ends up shooting the Reaper in the heart, and Maggie asks why these people are doing this to them. But the dude doesn't say a word and shows a pin as he let a grenade off so he can kill himself. So yeah, these people are bad news. But lucky for Maggie, Herschel, her son, is safe. And Maggie ends up talking to Kelly and telling her that she really hopes that her sister gets home safe. And it looks like Maggie's gonna know either way, considering she's joining back with their team going to Alexandria. And even if Negan is there, it looks like Maggie has finally came home. And we're back with episode 8, this time starting with Daryl's voice overlaying. He says that they finally got Maggie and them back, but it looks like they're still gonna have problems down in the future. So that's the future. Let's talk about the past and the present. Let's start with Dog and Daryl. Oh yeah, and Carol. Because this episode's just gonna be Daryl, Carol, and Dog. So apparently they're out here hunting, which isn't as easy as it used to be. But Daryl does ask Carol if she knows how to spearfish. And of course Carol's like, yeah, of course I could do this, which Daryl thinks she's gonna fail. But she does eventually catch some fish. It just looks like she needs help from Daryl to fillet them. But as they make it to this abandoned house, Daryl ends up starting to reminisce. Apparently he's been here before and met the owner of Dog. Well, I guess we're gonna figure out now, because we are going 5 years back. Apparently out when Daryl was looking for Rick out through the river, he did find a little puppy. And this is actually Dog as a pup, even though Daryl still doesn't know its owner. But Daryl's not too worried about it, as he just got a mapped out route of everywhere he's looked around the river to see if he's found Rick's body, or at least Rick alive. Like, you could just see how much Daryl cares. Oh yeah, and back in one of Michonne's past episodes, she did go and talk to Daryl when he was out there, so it looks like Carol does too. But Daryl does stay out there no matter what type of weather he's in. But when the rain starts to pour, it does ruin his map, so now he doesn't know where he's looking. Then 1 year later passes, and he sees a bigger version of Dog, but still not the Dog that we see. Daryl ends up going to the building that him and Carol are at right now, because apparently the Dog was kind of leading him towards it, so he kills the walkers, but then gets a gun put to his head. But it looks like Daryl's just looking forward to leaving. And then we flip back to now, seeing that Daryl and Dog end up finding a hidden cache that somebody left. And when Daryl looks at her, he does look pretty sad, so something happened. Then we cut back to the past to see if the woman actually did let Daryl go. So we cut to 6 more months later, seeing that he's still looking for Rick. But now Daryl's not alone too long, because it looks like he's with the lady and the dog. It looks like 8 more months pass, and it looks like Daryl's still searching. And even having close encounters with this girl, you know? It's good to see Daryl closer to a girl than his crossbow. But then 3 months pass, and instead of Daryl going into the building, he just throws a fish over to her. And she ends up coming back and throwing the food at Daryl and says she can find fish on her own, she just wants to be alone. And of course later on, it looks like Daryl ends up going to check on her. And we figure out that she's had it pretty bad because the only kid that she actually loved died, but it wasn't actually her biological kid, it was her sister's, and she ended up dying in birth. But as Daryl was on a search for Rick, he did have her by his side. But the problem is, she really does love him. So when 10 months pass and everybody's quiet, we see that she's not too happy that he keeps leaving and going to look for Rick. So she tells him to make a choice to either stay with her or go look for Rick. So one night when she ended up falling asleep, he ended up leaving her a note saying, "I belong with you and find me." And he stashed it under those 2 pieces of wood that Carol found earlier. And that's how Daryl got Dog, and they ended up becoming best friends after that. And then we cut back to Daryl and Carol, and Daryl ends up talking to Carol about how she kind of ruined a lot of things, and that sometimes he wishes that she just stayed on the boat. And it is sad seeing them two in an argument, but they have to work it out because they are a team. And we're back with episode 19. This time we're in the perspective of Gabriel when all the whispers were coming in, but Maggie and them actually saved them. And now they're eternally grateful to Maggie. So it looks like she sent Gabriel and Aaron on a trip to look for caches. Apparently Georgie knew about a bunch of weapon and item caches around here. So Maggie gave Gabriel a map as they check out all the places. But as Gabriel says they still have a couple places on the map, it looks like Aaron's ready to get back home to his daughter. But Gabriel says they gotta keep pushing. So while they're venturing on, the only way they know where they're going is because of the map, but Gabriel gets slipped in by a zombie and it destroys the map. And at first it just starts off as a joke to him and Aaron, until Aaron says they should turn around and their trail goes cold. The only actual reason they knew where they were going was because they're mud trails. So it looks like these two are on their own to get home. But the crazy part about it is Maggie and Georgie went around the whole entire place but never seen this building. So Gabriel and Aaron end up checking it out to see nobody's in there. You know, besides Aaron screaming like a little girl getting Gabriel's attention. But it was literally just a toy. Anyways, these two end up finding a bunch of food and drinks. So why not start drinking and get drunk? My boys get hammered. But I'm not gonna lie to you, when Gabriel gets drunk, he gets in his feelings and says some really crazy things. But it looks like they woke up in the morning for like 5 seconds but then passed out again. But then this time when Gabriel wakes up, Aaron's not there. And when somebody starts coming closer to Gabriel, it does not look like Aaron. He sits Gabriel back down since he has an AR and talks to him. But just like Gabriel, we're waiting on seeing where Aaron is. Because even though it's not in the shown area, he actually has Aaron's arm sitting over there. Oh, there's Aaron, you know, nothing can go wrong now. Yeah, besides when the dude puts one bullet in the revolver and puts it down and makes them play Russian roulette. And if they don't click it to their heads, he'll shoot them both. And the even bigger part is they have the choice to either aim it at their head or aim it at their friend. So of course when it hits Gabriel, Gabriel hits himself, and so does Aaron. And as he gets to the last shot with Gabriel, he ends up putting it down. And the dude actually ends up stopping. He just says that he had a bad family. And at first he actually introduces himself at Mace, and I'm like, okay, maybe he's coming back with us. No. Gabriel ends up whacking him one hit with Aaron's arm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I did not expect that from him, not gonna lie. But Gabriel says that they need to pack everything up and then get going. So while they're checking the place, they end up going upstairs. They end up smelling a horrible smell. And they end up finding out it's a bunch of dead walkers. And the dude's brother that he left chained up here. Okay, maybe Mace was crazy. But he does end up pulling a gun out, and instead of shooting them, he ends up shooting himself. I guess he just couldn't deal with the pain. And there goes two brothers that just couldn't survive in the zombie apocalypse. So as our boys are on their way to the last tower, hopefully they'll make it back with some supplies. And we're back with episode 20, and I got y'all. Yeah, we are back with Eugene and the others seeing what actually happened to him. These people in these suits ended up rushing up on him, and we will learn more about them, but if you know about the comics, then you know who they are. But right now, let's see what they're going to do to our team. This episode is actually a princess episode, which is kind of weird since she's our new character, but it looks like she has a lot of voices in her head to keep her company. These people in the suits did put them all in different crates, but like I said, Princess is crazy, so she's not too worried. And as Princess hears a voice beside her, she ends up figuring out it's Yumiko. But when those people in the suits brought her in, it looks like they busted her up a little bit. So Princess tells her stories about her family to make sure she doesn't fall asleep. And Princess's character is really weird, but it's really unique to see how somebody that's living on their own has been. But just because she's crazy doesn't mean that she's not smart. She ends up hatching out a piece of wood and figures out she can climb through the back. She ends up walking out to see Eugene on the other side of one of them. So she tells Eugene that they need to get out of there now. But Eugene says no, and that she needs to get back in her cage because they need to just go through their protocol. But I mean, I'm kind of with Princess, like, look how they brought them in. Anyway, she does go back to her room. And what's really weird is when they give them showers because that's just uncomfortable. But they bring her in for questioning as she keeps playing around, but it looks like they're really serious about this. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know if I trust them. But once again, she ends up climbing out of her crate to look around. But this time, Eugene or Yumiko aren't in their places. And as she goes back to her place once again, she ends up seeing King Ezekiel coming from the roof. Finally, and he wants to get out of here. Somebody that actually wants to do something. But a guard starts to approach the room. And as Princess keeps talking, it looks like King Ezekiel ends up punching him and knocking him down. And the dude pleads not to hurt him because they're really just trying to put them through the test. But King Ezekiel just starts beating the crap out of the dude. Until we see it wasn't King Ezekiel this whole time, it's been Princess. Definitely has a couple screws loose. But as she keeps seeing King Ezekiel and says that she can just run away right now, she doesn't, and she tells the dude she's sorry. So he says alright, and all that he needed was her cooperation. So he puts his outfit back out and tells everybody that he's got her and let's go. And they have our team ready for execution. But hopefully somehow our team makes it. And we're back with episode 21, starting off with Carol talking. She ends up saying that they did end up taking out the Whisperers, but the Whisperers took out all their crops and food's already as scarce as it is. And now that Maggie's group joined too, it looks like even more mouths to feed. But we end up cutting straight back to Carol and Daryl back where they were after the last episode. And it looks like they're both on their way home, but they're gonna split up. And as they both go their different ways, Dog's just like, But instead of picking to go with Daryl, he ends up going with Carol. So Carol goes back to Alexandria where we get a good couple moments with Jerry. But even though there's not that many things that Carol can use to make soup, she's gonna figure out how to. While Daryl's still trying to make his way home, but it looks like his bike's starting to mess up. So it looks like he's gonna go on foot and try to find the piece he needs. While Carol's having a hard time with Dog as he's not listening at all. But she also doesn't have the resources that she needs for the soup. So she ends up going out to try to find some. While Daryl finds the old truck, he ends up finding the piece he needs for his bike. Because keep in reminder, Daryl's bike's kind of homemade. All the other cars and vehicles are actually broken. Or more like there's just no gas anymore. But Daryl fixes his bike. And he gets back on the road. Or, well, he was about to until he sees some walkers down the road. And for some odd reason, he ends up going towards them. But we figure out that Daryl was only going over there because he thought he seen a Reaper. So he goes down to fight the walker, but does end up slipping. But the walker ends up almost falling on Daryl, but he does kill it. And maybe he was useful because he had a bag on him. And it looks like he definitely was because it had a couple MREs in it. While Carol's day started pretty well until she figured out she has to deal with rats now. I mean, I guess it's better than being hunted by whispers. But as it gets dark, it looks like Carol and Dog think more about Daryl. But that night, she thinks that she's hearing some thuds from the wall. So she cuts it open, maybe thinking that food might be in it. But instead, nothing literally is in there, and she looks like a crackhead looking for her last piece. So next day, she ends up waking up to clean the mess. And Jerry says that he's really worried about her and needs to know she's okay. Because he knows that her and Daryl are having problems, but he's missed King Ezekiel too. Because he was sick and King Ezekiel and him are best friends. And the rat got outside. So the day gets better and better, and Daryl finally makes it home. And even when Carol and Daryl talk, it just doesn't even feel like them. But she asks if he wants some soup or his knife back. And he says no, that she can keep the knife, and no, he don't want soup. And I don't know what these two are doing with their relationship, but they better fix it now. I really hope y'all enjoyed the extra episodes, but I'm going to tell y'all this one's definitely my favorite. Basically, if you've been liking Negan this season, then we're getting a Negan origin story. So we start out with Carol taking Negan actually to a new house, because Maggie doesn't want him around because she's too afraid that she'll kill him. So eventually he goes out and goes on a walk towards the place that he ended up, getting killed. Gosh, I'll never forget that day. But he ends up digging hole after hole after hole to look for his bat, I'm assuming. And after a good 80 holes, he does end up finding it. And with a smile, we finally get a backstory of why he calls his bat Lucille. Well, his story kind of starts off a little weird. Apparently right now he's gotten stolen by a couple people that want to know where he got meds from. Like, they kind of just started us in the weirdest part of the story. But it cuts to 2 to 3 days before, and Negan was actually checking house to house to see if he could find medicine. And he does see people, so he's trying to rob them, but does end up getting knocked out by a bat. And look, it's literally one of the girls that's in the Saviors from Negan's group. So Negan finally wakes up and explains that he's not evil, he just wants to get medicine back to his wife. And they ask him if he's been an alright man, but he says lately, no he hasn't. Yeah, get ready for all the time changes. So it looks like Negan's been keeping up with her medicine pretty well. And even being a super good husband to her. Even reading his wife books to keep her happy. But the one biggest thing I think is crazy is Negan never wanted to kill walkers. But apparently Negan's trying to take him and his wife somewhere far, far away because he's trying to siphon gas out of cars. But Negan does break down and says that he's sorry that he's been a horrible husband. But after one night of them whining and dining over some dog food, that night Negan forgot to turn off the generator. So the generator ended up going out and all the mess. And at the moment Negan's just trying to find another way to get some more. But his wife says she knows what he did. And let me tell you, he hurt his wife in a horrible way. So we cut back to see that Negan was actually a big gamer and didn't honestly care too much for his wife, as he'd use her money and literally take the tag off so she couldn't take it back. Oh yeah, and a big reason why he's not making money is because he literally lost his job. Yeah, Negan was actually a gym teacher but got in a fight with some kid. But she explains to Negan that he needs to take her to the doctor, but he says that he can't take her on that day. Which is kind of crazy because the doctor said she needed a ride home. And when the doctors end up figuring out that her cancer's starting to appear, as she's about to drive herself home, she ends up calling Negan to get no answer, and ends up calling one of her best friends to get no answer. Until we figure out that Negan actually cheated on his wife. And lucky for him, she didn't take him out in the modern time. Yeah, Negan really wasn't a good person. But he'll never forgive himself because all he cares about is making her better. So he said no matter how many doctors he's got to bring back or medicine he's got to bring back, he will come back to save her. And that's where he cut back to seeing those new people that are asking why he got here. And they do set him up with some medicine to take on the road. Because these two are actually helping everybody. Even giving Negan a gun and a bat to make sure he can fight off anybody that tries to take his stuff. Which doesn't help too much because he gets taken not too long after that. Because these people were actually watching Negan, waiting for him to come out because they're trying to find these people and the supplies that they have. But instead of Negan just getting out some way, he actually does rat out the family. Which is honestly super sad, but Negan doesn't care. He's on his way to his wife. But unlucky for him, he was too late. he comes back to see Lucille is dead. And he knows that he probably could have made it back with the medicine earlier if it wasn't because of those people. So he goes back to their gated community, rips off the barbed wire, puts it on the bat, and that's where Negan started to use the bat. But before, of course, he left, he ended up burning the house down and then going. And those people are still trying to get the supplies off of this man and thinking about doing sexual stuff to his daughter. So lucky for us, Negan's here to take these people out, coming out of the shadows, getting his first bat kill. And not stopping there, he ends up getting the leader. And he has his first little Negan talk with him, as he says the second he stops talking is the second he's going to kill him. And their conversation isn't too long to his death. Now in actual time, we see that Negan actually found his bat, but when he swings it at a walker, he ends up breaking it. So that's where he starts a fire and finally breaks down and tells Lucille that he's sorry that he has a bat that he used for her, and now he hopes that she found somebody in the afterlife. And this is why this episode is so heartwarming and one of my favorite episodes of The Walking Dead in general. And it looks like Negan ends up making his way home, as Carol says he just needs to stay at that house away from Maggie. But he ends up saying that they shouldn't have any problems. And we'll figure out more about that next season. And I hope y'all have enjoyed this series so far, because the next season is the last season. 3 more parts. I'll see y'all.